when they were competing for influence in and around Mazar-i-Sharif.
Dobbin says that Atta's stance is more than just saber-rattling, that it represents a real danger of political fragmentation.
The anti-Taliban coalition that prevailed in late 2001 with American assistance could at the time have fallen out among themselves in a competition for power, and that could still happen. The dispute over the current election could easily lead to serious rifts within the anti-Taliban coalition in the country.
In the wake of the elections, with tension rising in the north, there are reports in the press that weapons prices have doubled as Afghans prepare for a possible confrontation. We cannot verify the numbers, but while filming with Atta's district police, they find an unregistered assault rifle in the back of this car. Unregistered rifles are evidence of a black market weapons trade, as Northerners brace for a possible clash between the two old rivals. 5 years ago, Afghanistan's first presidential elections brought hope to many that 30 years of warlord rule, violence, and impunity were about to come to an end. In the 2009 election, warlords are back.
Unfortunately, the result of this election, it is a disaster for Afghan people, and it is a second chance for the narco traffic, for the corrupt, for the warlord to share their power between them.
The same men who have fought over control of the country for decades are back at the center of national politics, serving as kingmakers for a presidency that seems every day less democratic and every day more powerless.
Return of the Warlords, an excerpt of a report by independent journalist Rick Rowley of Big Noise Films. He'll join us in our Firehouse studio after this break. Stay with us.
If you knew the bombs were falling, if they showed them hit the ground, if you could see the bodies flying, if you could hear the sound, if you could see the rubble where the hospital once stood, if you saw the child's lifeless limbs, would you hold them if you could? If you knew that they were lying every time they spoke, for every laser-guided pinprick there were lives lost in the smoke. If instead of just the generals, they had doctors too to describe the carnage of the cluster bombs. What if you knew? They were saying when they think you cannot hear, if you understood what they do, if for you it was so clear, if you knew they shut down the factory in an economic ruse, if you could kiss the cheek of the child in the sweatshop that made your shoes. Every time we went to war to fight our evil foes, they told you we were really fighting for the good of CEOs. If you could feel the hunger of the many, see the riches of the few, if they told it like it is, what if you knew?
What If You Knew by Dave Rovix. This is Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report. I'm Juan Gonzalez. We're joined now by independent journalist Rick Rowley. He's just back from Afghanistan and joins me now in the Firehouse studio. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Rick.
Thanks, Juan. It's always a pleasure.
General Dalston, where is he right now?
Well, he came back the day or 2 days before the election to rally votes for Karzai. As soon as the election happened, he went to Kabul for a minute to negotiate what sort of deal he's going to get. And then he's gone back to Turkey to keep a low profile until the whole fraud investigation has been clarified.
And you were there for a month in total, and your sense now back in the United States as you're hearing the Obama administration debating sending possibly as many as 40,000 more troops to Afghanistan?
Yeah, well, Juan, I mean, the U.S. military has finally been allowed to admit to the American people that we're losing the war militarily. But an even greater crisis, potentially, is this political crisis, that the thin veneer of a democratic central government for which we've been fighting and killing and dying for 8 years has been shattered and really destroyed in these elections. Not just with the fraud, but with Karzai bringing back in the warlords. And it's not just Dostum. Dostum is the archetype of all warlords. But Dostum, Fahim, and Mohaqiq are the three key people in Karzai's campaign. Fahim, of course, the most important Tajik warlord in the country. Mohaqiq, the most important Hazara warlord in the country. And Dostum, the most important Uzbek warlord. So right now, Karzai is acting less as a, well, I mean, just the illusion, not even of a democratic government, but of a central government has disappeared. Karzai is mediating a coalition of warlords who can deliver him the votes to get the elections. He's not even acting as a central government anymore. And so that question, I mean, what are we killing and fighting and dying for? What is this government? I mean, is it even a government? I mean, that raises even more serious questions in my mind than whether we can win militarily on the ground. And
so, in effect, Karzai is sort of acting more as the head of a crime syndicate than the head of a duly constituted government.
Well, I mean, there are certainly many indications. There are open investigations against many of Karzai's key supporters that indicate criminal activity. I mean, Dostum, the rap sheet on Dostum is huge. It's very difficult to prove any of these kinds of allegations, you know, in Afghanistan, because the country is still very much run by these strong regional powers. Dostum is, I mean, there's been a lot of reporting on Democracy Now! About the Dashti Lele massacre that Dostum is implicated in, and there's an ongoing investigation into that, where up to 2,000 prisoners of war were loaded into boxcars and suffocated and then just dumped in the desert. I mean, that's just one. There's also, he's rocketed and killed 4,000 civilians in Kabul. He's been accused of kidnapping and torturing his political opponents. Karzai's brother, of course, is accused of being a major narco-trafficker in Kandahar. So, yeah, I mean, the rap sheets against the characters inside Karzai's government right now is long.
And one of the things your report points out is the level of internal displacement or refugees forced out of their homes as a result of these conflicts by the warlords. Could you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important to recognize the differences between Iraq and Afghanistan in this sense that that in Iraq, as opposed to a straight occupation and invasion as we had in Iraq, where the population is 100% against the Americans being there. In Afghanistan, it's more like we invaded at the end of an unresolved civil war. And so a civil war that has become, over the course of decades, has become more and more violent, more and more ethnically based. So yeah, there are tens of thousands of refugees, of Pashtun refugees in the south, and of Tajik refugees in the north who've been forced from their land.
Well, Rick Rowley, independent journalist with Big Noise Films, I want to thank you for joining us. Just returned from Afghanistan. His piece called Return of the Warlords airs on Al Jazeera English today.